Sin, a disease incurable by design. Contagious and cancerous, it takes root in a vessel, spreading throughout the body until it exterminates the soul. Incapable of discrimination, sin has infected all of mankind, the most elusive of diseases. It cannot be eradicated externally, nor extracted through internal means. I will attempt to tell the story of two Christians tortured by their transgressions and the wisdom of a sage that enlightens them both. Not a passenger was surprised the plane reached max capacity. It was normal. One would think a plane to America came complete with winning lottery tickets. The congestion was apparent. The overhead compartments bulged with luggage. Latching them securely was nearly impossible. A politician was seated next to a working-class father. The politician appeared remorseful and the father ashamed. Unable to ignore one another's countenance, they sought the cause of each's misery. The politician's voice, shaking with defeat, exclaimed, "I'm the worst type of liar." The father, almost enraged by the politician's rebuttal, responds, "I assure you, I am the worst type of liar." Glaring at one another, prepared to defend their positions loudly, their gaze was interrupted by a flight attendant's instructions. "Please fasten your seatbelt securely. Stow all carry-on luggage below the seat in front of you." She continued, however, the gentlemen began to speak amongst themselves. The politician proposed the two debate. He convinces the father they should pose arguments explaining why they believe they are the worst type of liar. Likewise, they both receive one rebuttal opportunity to weaken the other's argument. Finally, they will judge amongst themselves who's the worst type of liar. The force of a speeding aircraft pressed the backs of the passengers firmly against their seats as the plane began its ascent. Eager to defend his position, the politician gathers his thoughts and offers to begin the debate. The country's government differs from the Republican democracy practiced in America. We operate under a constitution, yes. Nevertheless, it is a federal monarchy. I've been offered an opportunity to join the Federal Executive Council. Most places regard highly and well-connected individuals. However, concern less with who you know and more with who you can influence. If I ever wanted to make a difference in my country, I needed influence. Regrettably, I paid with integrity. So, lying wasn't always second nature. The first time I deceived the public, my words resonated piercingly, drenched in authenticity. Bursting with vigor and promise, my eyes passionately scanned the crowds. I had declared war on poverty, taxes, and health care. Political ignorance exposed my quixotic and amateur expectations for sudden improvement. To make matters worse, instead of improving, the nation's situation worsened. Strangely, the citizens had never been more unified. Their quality of life had been reduced, preceded by promises which led to a series of unmet expectations. Certainly, they wanted me dead. To my surprise, they wanted me back. The politician's face tightens, guilt diminishing his demeanor. The worst was yet to come. Evidently, turmoil had eroded the discernment of the nation's citizens. It was more beneficial to support a liar who gave them hope than to assist an honest man who would never be elected. Re-election after re-election, deception began to weave itself into my innermost character. As I took more prestigious and influential offices, I began to convince myself I was doing God's work. I often quoted Romans 13:1. Everyone must submit to governing authorities, for all authority comes from God, and those in positions of authority have been placed there by God. As much as the citizens needed a voice, I needed Parliament's support. Opportunities presented themselves almost instantly. Disregard for our nation's borders aroused anxiety among several ministers. A private agenda to raise a quick reaction force placed me once again behind a podium. As barbaric and atrocious as any politician, I aggravated the fears of every man and woman in attendance. I was a natural, from propaganda to legislature. Most of all, I was effective. Mild turbulence shook the plane. The sound of the pilot's voice complemented the rattling wheels beneath the concession cart. "Just a little rain. Should be the worst of it," he reassures the passengers. Tugging gently at the bottom of his shirt, the politician removed the resting wrinkles. He prepares to close. Aside from blatant duplicity, the intentional manipulation of subconscious fears, and having an active role in diminishing the welfare of poverty-stricken families, to accept a lifetime appointment to ministry would prove my malevolence. Can a man be labeled anything other than a perjurer? He who keeps no promises, deceives his supporters, and oppresses the weak to gain favor with the oppressor. Silence fills the air as the father ponders the words of the politician, waiting patiently for the father's impossible rebuttal. The politician begins to feel confident with his position. To the politician's surprise, the father's eyes blazed with opportunity, his cheekbones struggling to conceal his excitement. He laughed abruptly, but quickly regained his poise. Composed and articulate, the father begins to refute the politician's argument. Your position is compelling, to say the least, yet the foundation in which you build your argument will consume it. You are a man of structure in a world motivated by appetite. One must govern the other. I was asked once, how does one domesticate a lion? My response was coarse and concise. First, you remove it from its natural habitat. Secondly, you provide for it a smaller habitat, restricting the potential growth. Lastly, you give it a master, one who appears to love the beast, establishes dominance over it, and demands loyalty. So, I say to you, how do you domesticate a human? The answer may seem elusive, though history has made apparent the two ways most effective: religion and government. Like the zoo, religion first removes your mind from the physical world and establishes it in a spiritual realm. Secondly, it provides a book or a series of scrolls to create parameters which should not be crossed, lest one cultivate ill will towards himself. Lastly, it gives you a sage, savior, or guru to whom you owe your new state of mind. You, my friend, just so happen to be an instrument practicing an age-old technique. Government takes man from the jungle and makes him a part of society. Then it burdens the appetite with numerous laws provided to limit actions provoked by primitive desires. Finally, providing for the people a president, king, or queen to whom they owe the comforts of citizenship. As Christians, we regard sin with great contempt, but to believe yourself to be the worst type of liar is absurd. Without government, humans will behave like animals, ruled by our desires. I doubt the word temptation would even exist at all. We wouldn't be tempted, we just do what we want. Certainly, it is best for a few politicians to lie and maintain a nation than it is for everyone to lie to each other and destroy it. By the end of the father's passionate rebuttal, the two have been eyed at least once by each passenger. The two gentlemen have become weary of discourse, both their eyes struggling to resist the laws of gravity. The two men agree to resume after refreshing their minds, awakening within minutes of each other, eager to finish the debate. What felt like a full night's rest turned out to be 3 hours of rapid eye movement. My country has suffered from an unequal distribution of wealth for as long as history books find convenient to account. The middle class is a class of individuals in constant fear of being broke, while our lower class longs for the luxury of fearing poverty instead of being its personification. All the while, the rich kill themselves, burdened by mortality, the only force stopping them from spending the wealth of 2 lifetimes. For most of my life, my wife and I were middle-class citizens. After having our second child, I was blessed to receive a job as an architect, working a major project expected to span 5 years. Roughly a year before the project would end, my wife and I would be expecting our third baby. However, due to better construction conditions than expected, the project was ended early. My wife was with child and I was unemployed. In a panic, we applied for every government assistance program we qualified for. After a series of approvals and disqualifications, we were approved for a grocery allowance, housing aid, reduced health care, and unemployment. Struggling to maintain a modest lifestyle, we had to put our eldest in charge of babysitting to get rid of daycare fees. Additionally, we would sell 25 to 30% of our grocery allowance for cash to buy paint and canvases. When I wasn't building the future, I was painting it. We had fallen from middle-class citizens to survivors overnight. A freelance construction team caught wind of my unemployment. At the same time, the paintings began to produce a dependable profit. Management offered to pay me under the table, not to interfere with my unemployment, seeing how construction can be an uncertain career field. At this moment, I realized a series of well-executed financial stunts could be my opportunity to real wealth. Tax season approached, and so did I with the best plan I could think of. I made a dime wherever I could get a nickel. I created fraudulent pay stubs for my eldest to reflect the expenses accrued from child care services. She would transfer the money from her account back to me in cash. Therefore, we received the max amount refundable for daycare on our taxes. I legitimized the painting business via LLC and laundered all the revenue from the construction site, creating a non-taxed income. Though the LLC was turning a small profit, the business was registered in my brother's name, which allowed me to continue receiving unemployment. Government assistance paid the bills. Construction work got us ahead, and the LLC accrued the wealth. Father presses the outsides of his eyes towards his nose, suppressing a clear shame and discontent. The father continues. For years, I justified my actions with contempt for the rich, reciting verses like Proverbs 13:2. A good person leaves an inheritance for his grandchildren, but the wealth of the wicked is reserved for the righteous. After years of carefully orchestrated tax evasion, unreported income, and a thriving business, I could finally see myself coming out of this rut. Is there a better way to describe mendacity? If not by my actions, I've made it my profession to deceive the government and manipulate federal resources. The means in which I obtain my wealth has oppressed me so. It brings the pleasure of accomplishment from my success. A loud beep fills the aisles of the aircraft, alerting the passengers that the intercom had been engaged. The pilot's assuring voice updates the travelers. We'll be landing shortly. Please fasten your seatbelts. The politician adjusted his buckle as he organized the basis of his rebuttal. The politician begins. If I were justly to charge a man of your circumstance with malicious deception, I would be inclined to judge an escaped slave as if he were an employee engaged in mutiny. If you have erred at all, it would be in adopting the methods of Friedrich Nietzsche's Übermensch, while nevertheless toiling with moral demands of Christianity. As a father responsible for your lineage and the upbringing of your children, we can agree a worse lie has been told for a worse reason. If an aspiration to acquire wealth using the means readily afforded is unfair, poverty is the righteousness of the working class citizen. Even the acts of Robin Hood, an outright thief, liar, and assailant, would not claim to be the worst type of liar, for the presence of a worse type is why he exists. The confidence of the father was shattered by the accurate simplicity of the politician's rebuttal. As the plane continued to descend, infants and toddlers shared their disdain for the law of atmospheric pressure. The runway could be seen from the windows. The clouds the plane once soared above now towered the aircraft. The wheels hit the ground, each passenger rocking back and forth until the rearward thrust began to slow the plane and bring the bodies to a rest. The two gentlemen struggled with the verdict. Unsuccessful in their attempts, they headed towards baggage claim. So divided, a coin toss seemed suitable. As they waited for their luggage, a man overheard their conversation and offered to help distinguish a victor. The man dressed loosely, his hair was dreaded, and skin as smooth as old age would permit. The gentleman would have dismissed him without a second glance if it had not been for the leather briefcase crested with the symbol of Cooper Theological Seminary. The gentleman's words apologized for the ignorance revealed by their demeanor towards the rugged-appearing professor. The two men eagerly invited his counsel, stating their positions and addressing each rebuttal. Within 15 minutes, the professor had an hour of discourse refined to a series of objective statements. As most professors would, he took a deep breath as if preparing to give a long-winded lecture. Before he could begin, his phone rang. Maintaining his poise, a sense of urgency quickened his disposition. "Forgive me, but I have an unexpected lunch to attend. However, I believe I can leave words of peace and promote inquiry. First, there must be a standard for deception, a rubric by which all lies are measured. Who better to represent this base than the fallen angel Lucifer? The worst type of liar is the one who lies for lying's sake. Lucifer did not lie to hurt God, for God's omniscience makes pain impossible. He did not lie to destroy mankind, for God can redeem and save. Worst of all, he did not lie to benefit himself, for no advantage would enable him to defeat God. Then, why lie? Simply because the introduction of doubt is the exterminator of truth, while the pursuit of truth armed with false knowledge is the mother of all fallacy. We have learned telling one lie leads to telling another. However, Satan knew if he told one lie, we would create the others." The professor glances at his watch. Nevertheless, he continues, calm and collected. "You gentlemen lie by necessity. It does not make it right, but your actions would be justified by most men in your shoes. According to the rubric, neither of you are the worst type of liar, nor did either of you ponder the right question." The professor begins to walk towards the exit, repeatedly looking at the time. His voice carries as the distance between them grows. "The question should not be who lies the worst, but why your systems for livelihood are incompatible with honesty.